All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors. A second, I'm sorry. Pull it up. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for this year, to thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor for Tavshin Pei Hey, the Tilson family of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Shum and Droshos this year as a zechus for Besoros Tovos for all of Am Yisrael. We thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan, Stephen Terry Zinn, in honor of the birth of their granddaughter Devorah Eliana Zinn, and a creation of the yard site of Dr. Zinn's father Bunim Tzvi Ben Chaim Zichron Livracha. Shmuel Raman Karabkin, in the Solstice of Shlima for Rabin's cousin serving in the IDF, Binyamin Chaim Pesach Ben Mushachano, and the creation of the yard site of Rabin's mother, Pesa Mira Bas Chaim. And Dr. Moshe and Ellen Gevant, in memory of Dr. Gevant's parents, Yaakov Meir Ben Moshe Leib and Sheena Bas Abba Zichron Livracha. Dr. Bezad and Yamina Saufer of Los Angeles, in the merit of a Refuah Shlima for Esther Bracha Bas Chaya. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshamos Lav and Aliyah, the families in Nechama, all those who need a Refuah Shlema together with Kol Cholei Yisrael, Chadosh Baruch Hu Shleim Hashem, free and return our hostages, and allow our Holy soldiers to be successful. B'chol Maaseh Yedehem. But with that, we have a lot to do today. Baruch Hashem. Today's daf is Kuf Mem Vav 146. We are picking up Emiras Hashem on Kuf Mem Ham Beis 145b, 14 lines down from the top. Tan Rabbanan. We actually began this a little bit, but let's pick up from here today. Emiras Hashem. Tan Rabbanan. 1 second. Sorry. Okay. Tan Rabbanan. So remember again, we had this interesting case. We introduced this a little bit yesterday, this concept that in order for Shoshvinos, right, we are still in the sugya of Shoshvinos. In order for Shoshvinos to be obligatory, there has to be what we'll call situational reciprocity. So in other words, remember the way Shoshvinos works is I go to Ruvain's chasana and give him a gift, and then halacha l'maisa, Ruvain is halachically obligated to give me a gift when I get married. So remember again, it's a gift that's enforceable in Beis Din, and we saw all the different halachos concerning that gift. Now remember, now the Gemara is introducing to us that in order for Ruvain to be obligated to reciprocate the gift, so the gift has, in other words, my wedding, on a very simple level, my wedding has to mirror his wedding. There has to be situational reciprocity. So again, the Gemara says, so let's say, for example, Ruvain had a very big chasana. Pumbi means in public. Me, I'm going to elope, right? I'm going to have a quiet chasana, just a couple of people. So I say, Ruvain, where is the Shoshvinos? Ruvain can say to me, Ruvain can say, listen, same way you gave me a gift because I made a big chasana, a big public to do. So too again, I'm going to give you a gift when you have situational reciprocity. Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. The Rashbam says, Aseimi b'pumbi. It's about 5 lines up from before it gets wide. The Rashbam writes, Begalui simcha miforsemes. V'zeh shechazer naser gam hu isha bikesh lasos chupasa b'tznius. So again, Reuven had a big chasana, and he wanted, right? And then I'm getting married, and I'm having a much smaller chasana. Olafi shas, so you guys, Olafi shas tzorahi osherotzel samsim sudos of eina choshesh harbe sochlan. So it's interesting. So the Rashbam says, why would it be that somebody's making a smaller chasana? So right, what's going on? So it says either because it could be a time of decrease, or just he's looking to save money, right? A number of different reasons. So the idea over here is Ruvain could claim to me, I'm not giving you back Shoshvinos because you're not making the same kind of chasana I'm making. So you see over here this concept that Shoshvinos only becomes a required gift if there is situational reciprocity. Or, right? Ruvain was getting married, it was the first marriage, right? And now I'm getting married, it's a second marriage. So again, Ruvain can say to me, so Rabbi can say, listen, I'm not obligated to give you Shoshvinos because Shoshvinos requires situational reciprocity. So when you get married the first time, so to speak, like I got married the first time, I'll go ahead and give you Shoshvinos. So let's say Ruvain got married for the second time and I gave him a gift, I gave him Shoshvinos, and now again I'm getting married for the first time. So Ruvain can say to me, listen, Isa Isha Acheres Es Imcha. So this one's a little awkward, right? So as Reuven says to me, listen, I'll get you on the second time. In other words, right? When you get married the second time, I'll go ahead and give you a gift, but right now I'm not obligated to give you shoshvinos. Asa imo ba'achos ubikesh lasos imo b'shnayim. Reuven only married one woman. I was going to marry two women. Yachol omer lo ba'achos asa imcha kiderach shasisa imi. Ultimately, again, I'll give you a gift when you're marrying one woman, like I married one woman. So we'll say. So this is the idea of situational reciprocity when it comes to shoshvinos. That's the concept. That's the concept. So again, remember, this is how they structured it. It doesn't have to what's the makar for that? The makar is this is how the gift itself was structured. Remember, especially if you understand it, that shoshvinos in its essence, as we saw in yesterday's daf, was really alone. So ultimately, again, the way the loan was made was for like transactions. In other words, I'm going to give you a gift, parentheses, loan, and the understanding is you're going to give that back to me when I am in a similar situation. Up until now, we thought similar just meant what? Getting married. Now it turns out that no, similar means that situational reciprocity, I'm getting married in the same way that you got married and for which I gave you a gift. Incredible. Tanabanan. So the person has some just beautiful Gemara. Tanabanan. Atir nechasin, atir pumbi. Let's say you have a guy who will literally translate it, and then we'll see what the Gemara is saying. Atir nechasin, atir pumbi means somebody who is rich with property and rich with pumbi. What's pumbi? If you take a look at the Rashbam says over here, Atir nechasin. It's the second wide line in the Rashbam. He says Asher misados ukramim v'zeisim. So Asher nechasin means someone who is wealthy with fields, with vineyards, with olive fields. Hanir and Lebrios. V'gam atir pumbi osher gali kagon rov behemos shakol yodeben. So I'll say atir nechasim atir pumbi means someone who has a lot of public wealth. In other words, he has land and he has livestock. A person like that, zehu bal hagodus. That's a person who possesses agadata knowledge. Let's say, so what the Gemara is really saying is like this, that a person who possesses knowledge in agadata, he is like a person who possesses publicly visible wealth. Just like when someone owns a lot of land, someone owns a lot of livestock, everyone could see that wealth. When someone knows agadata and knows how to give that over, everyone flocks to that person. If you look at the Rashbam, this very beautiful Bal Agada, third wide line in the Rashbam. Shedorish b'chol makom berabim b'bati mishtos shedorish b'yam tovim v'akol nesaf on l'shmoa. Because when a person knows agadata, everybody wants him to speak, right? And he gathers even b'bati mishtos, in the celebration places. And he gives drashas on Yom Tov. V'akol ne'asaf on l'shmoa v'yesh lo kol chachma u'bal hashmir shemitoch she'ein agados strichos iyun yochol lidrosh b'chol makom. See, it's not a new thing. Everybody loves agadata, right? Why does everybody love agadata? Because it's stories, it's mashalim, it's metaphors. It doesn't really require like a significant amount of intellectual depth or prowess. So the idea is just like the same. So beautiful. So the person who's able to teach agadata, he's considered to be like the most wealthy individual. Why? Everyone wants what he has. Everyone wants what he has. So beautiful. So the Gemara is atir sloim, atir takoa. What if somebody? So again, literally translated, atir sloim. The Rashbam really translates over here as a money changer, right? So a money changer is constantly dealing in money, obviously, and constantly making money through multiple exchanges. And atir takoa. The Rashbam has a couple of different interpretations, but the one he chooses to go with is one who makes his money from oil made in takoa. Eretz Yisrael. So apparently oil from Tekoa was very valuable and there were always buyers for it. Zehu bal pilpul. This refers to someone who possesses pilpul knowledge. So I will say, what is this? Take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says, Good. Look at Rashbam, Atir Takoa. He goes on, he says, at the end of that Rashbam, he says, V'dima l'matbeos u'l'shemen es ha'pilpul, al shem shemar viach yom tadr b'pilpulo, tamim harbe, kishar matbeos v'tami hashemen. So we'll say, so interestingly enough, like the Shulchani, he's always making more money, right? He's always engaging in different transactions. And he gets this coin, and it opens up this door, and this coin opens up this transaction. And oil, apparently, oil from Tekoa, apparently had multiple layers of flavor associated with it. So this is a Baal Pilpul. Baal Pilpul is someone will say what we would call today like lumdus. Lumdus, someone who's engaging in the intellectual underpinnings of particular sugyas in Gemara, in Halacha, in Yiddishkeit. There's always different layers of understanding. So a Baal Pilpul, these Gemaras are referring to people who possess different types of knowledge and comparing them to different types of wealth. Right? So the Baal Agadata that everybody loves, everybody wants, that's like the person who has vast holdings that are visible. A person who has the ability of pilpul, the ability to engage in lumdis, more intellectually driven, multiple layers of understanding of a particular sugya, that's like a person who's like the money changer. Always new transactions. The person who possesses the tekoan oil. That oil has multiple layers of flavor associated with it. Atir mashach, atir kamas. So if a person is wealthy with things that are measured or things that are stored, zehu bal shmuos. That refers to someone ultimately, again, who is in possession, who is like a repository for different rabbinic statements. If you take a look at the Rashbam says over here, Atir mashach anshe midos, metagiminan anshe mashchin asher bedavar hamadud, kigon tvua, shin mistakrin batadir, el machnisin osala otzar. So I will say somebody who is wealthy with things that are measured or things that are stored, this is a person who possesses a lot of wealth. Now, because it's stored, not everybody sees it. But when you need it, you know that this is the guy to go to. That refers to a Talmid Chacham who is a repository of halachic rulings. So such a person like that, you might not see his wealth every day, but when you need something, that's the guy to go to. That's the guy to go to. Hakol tzrichin lemarichitya. Everyone needs the person who sells wheat, and who is that? Gemara. That's the person who's Gemara. Both say it's beautiful. The Gemara compares Gemara to wheat. Just like everyone needs wheat in order to live, so too again, Gemara is the fundamental underpinning of all of our learning within Yiddishkeit. Everything comes from a Gemara. We don't even need the Gemara to tell us this because we know it from the Gemara, right? In other words, I don't need the statement. I know it experientially. Everything comes. I can learn Tanakh from Gemara. I can learn Mishnah from Gemara. I can learn Halacha from Gemara. I can learn Hashkafa from Gemara. I learn everything. Everything comes from here. So the Gemara compares the Gemara itself to wheat. I'll say just a word about these previous Gemaras, how beautiful it is. So if you take those Gemaras like this, what is the Gemara essentially saying? I'll say, what is true wealth in life? What is true wealth in life? So the Gemara is highlighting to us is that true wealth in life is Torah. And we know this because often we think that true wealth is material wealth. Material wealth comes and goes. And as secure as one may think they are in their material wealth, right? The history of man is filled with stories of people who amassed fortunes and then lost everything. Torah is the only true wealth that is yours, and not just yours in this world, yours in the world to come. And not just yours, but serves as a tremendous Yerusha for your future generations as well. Now you may think to yourself, but that's not true. You could lose your Torah also. Right? I would say, what about Rahman al-San? Someone has Alzheimer's, dementia, right? And they can't wake up. But here's the beauty of Torah. Torah imprints on your neshama, so that even if cognitively, verbally, you're unable to recall it, you're unable to share it, it's still embedded in your neshama. It is yours, and it remains there forever. This is the Gemara that says, Luchos v'shivrei luchos munachin ba'aron. Whether you are whole tablets or whether you are broken tablets, if you have embedded your life in the Aron, in the Ark of Holiness, you remain there in perpetuity. The wealth we need to amass in this world is the wealth of Torah. So decide what category you're going to fit in. Are you going to be the Baal Haggadas, the Baal Agarata? You're going to be an Agarata guy? And if you're going to be an Agarata guy, that's great. You know why? Because everybody loves Agarata. And you're going to be like that fabulously wealthy individual who everyone could see their holdings. Or are you going to be the Baal Pilpul? Right? You're going to be the kind of person who delves into the intricacies, the intellectual underpinnings of everything. In which case, you're going to be like the money changer or the guy who deals in oil from Tekoa. Or do you want to be the person who has vast storehouses of wealth? You're the guy who, when they need a halacha, they're able to come to you and ask you what the halacha is. Or do you want to be the wheat guy? Who's the wheat guy? That's the Gemara guy. That's the Gemara guy. My life is Gemara. Now let's say, whatever it is, choose a portfolio. Choose your avenue of wealth. Decide which lane you are going to drive for the rest of your life. And again, you can switch lanes also. But this is it. This is it. This is not just something we dabble in. This is not just something, okay, I devote an hour, 45 minutes a day to this. This is life. This is the same way that most of us don't just simply dabble in our careers, but we devote a significant amount of time. Why? Because our parnasa comes from that. Our parnasa ultimately really comes from Torah. You're right. We have to spend a lot of time in our day jobs. That we can't change that. We can't change that. But the Master will say, true wealth, true lasting wealth in this world, in the world to come, and for future generations, comes from our Torah. But only if we're serious about it, and only if we commit ourselves to it, and only if it's not something recreational, haphazard, something we dabble in. But when we're doing it, we're serious, we're committed, it has our undivided attention. We choose one of these portfolios of wealth, and there is no telling what we can become. It's incredible Gemara. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav, my dichsev. What's the meaning of the pasuk? Kol yimei ani ra'im. So we'll say this is a very profound pasuk. And it actually really fits on the heels of what we just learned before. So the Gemara quotes this pasuk from Mishlei. Kol yimei ani ra'im. And we'll say, here's a perfect example of just the Gemara being like wheat. Let's say I'm not going to take a show of hands about how many of us have learned Mishlei, right? Gone through Mishlei. Right? I'm not raising my hand either, so don't worry. We're all on the same boat with this one. And let's say, and this is it. So now, I would have never seen this pasuk had it not been for Daf Yomi, had it not been for a Gemara. So Shalom Melech says, Kol yimei ani ra'im v'tov leiv mishte tamid. So it was a very profound pasuk. All the days of the pauper are bad, and betov leiv mishte tamid. But one who engages in mishte, one who engages in celebration, his heart is constantly happy. So we'll say, what does this mean? Kol yimei ani ra'im. Kol yimei ani ra'im. So we'll say, even before we go on, by the way, you understand the juxtaposition here, right? What did the Gemara just say before? You got to become wealthy in Torah. You have to become wealthy in Torah. It's not a choice. I have to make this. Maybe it's going to take me my whole lifetime, but I need to become wealthy in Torah, because if I don't, I'm a pauper. And the days of the life of a pauper are bad. Why be a Torah pauper if you don't have to? Why be a Torah pauper if you don't have to? You know, so just as an aside, I was thinking about this. Do you know, like the times that we live in, that if you think about just one little thing, if you think about all of the Yomis that exist, there are enough Yomis that could require you to quit your day job, right? Between Daf Yomi, Amud Yomi, Mishnah Yomi, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi, Nach Yomi, Rambam Yomi. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other Yomis also that exist. It's incredible. But just think about this, that we live in a time where what's happened is projects that would seem really overwhelming and insurmountable have been broken down into smaller units that really become digestible. I had this last night. I felt really behind the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi, so I Kitzur binged last night a little bit, and it was incredible. Just like in the course of just a couple of minutes to go from Hilchos Tefillin to Hilchos Mezuzah, just incredible. Right now in Smichas Chaver tonight, we're beginning Hilchos Ribis. Hilchos Ribis. Hilchos Ribis. Whoever was it? You know Hilchos Ribis. You know I did Hilchos Ribis when I was learning Yan Kolal. In the Hilchos Ribis is like it's not stuff like you just stam learn, and yet like we're doing Hilchos. We're living in a time where you could become wealthy. You could become wealthy All it requires is a time commitment and your attentiveness when you're doing it. But there's an incredible opportunity that our parents didn't have, that our grandparents didn't have, that generations of Jews did not have. For us to become wealthy, all it requires is a time commitment, attentiveness, and there's no telling. And again, I don't have to be poor. Previous generations were poor. They really were. The Talmidei Chachamim were rich, and the regular guy was often impoverished. We need not be consigned to that same fate. All it requires of us is the time commitment and the opportunity to give it our attention. And even, the Gemara says, incredible. Kol yimei ani ra'im. So we'll say, what does it mean all the days of the ani are bad? Ze bal Talmud. This refers to a person who learns a lot of Gemara. Okay, now we'll see why that is. Now the Rashbam says, Shememis atzmo lechavin halachos l'taris havios. So we'll say because learning Gemara is really hard, and if you want to get clarity on the Gemara, you really have to kill yourself over the sugya. In other words, you really got to work very hard. So the Gemara, according to this opinion, it calls the person who learns Gemara kol yimei ani roim. All right, he's the ani, he's the poor person, and all of his days are difficult because he's constantly trying to understand the sugya. V'tov leiv mishte tamid, but glad is the heart of the person who's constantly celebrating. Who's that? Zeb Mishnah. This refers to the person who learns Mishnayos. You will say, why is it nice to learn Mishnayos? Mishnayos are nice. You learn a Mishnah, and a Mishnah again is a very simple and straightforward idea. And again, even though the Gemara kind of blows it open and it's filled with all this machlokes, for those couple of minutes you learn a Mishnah, life is good, everything makes sense. You're very happy. Rava says no, just the opposite. Rama Amar Ibcha. So we'll say Rava says just the opposite. The person who learns Mishnah, that's the person who's an ani. Why? Because when you learn Mishnah, all you're getting is a very small piece of the picture. But a person who learns Gemara, that's Tov Lev Mishte Tamid. Then I will say that's a person who has perpetual happiness. Why? Because he is fully immersed in the totality of the sugya. So beautiful. So we'll say this is actually very beautiful. Another beautiful pasuk from Koheles. Literally, he who hews stone will be sad from them, but one who goes ahead and splits wood will be warmed by it. So what does this mean? So a person who hews stone, what is that referring to? That refers to someone who learns Mishnah. There's Mishnah. I would say because learning Mishnah sometimes is nice, but sometimes it can be frustrating. Why? Because you can't discern halacha l'maisa from Mishnah, right? So Mishnah gives you beautiful kind of like an overarching view, but doesn't necessarily give you the depth to understand what to do. But he who chops wood will warm himself by that wood. Elu Baalei Talmud. That refers to Gemara. I would say it's so beautiful, right? Gemara is the wood that creates the fire through which, now again, it's interesting, Gemara is not the fire, right? Why is Gemara not the fire? Gemara is the wood. Because if it was just the fire, it just sounds like you just show up and warm yourself by it. No. Gemara is the wood. So what do you have to do with wood? You got to chop it, and then you have to create the fire along with it. So you have to work. You have to work through the sugya. You have to work to understand it. But if you're willing to put in the work, then the warmth that you will generate will warm you this world, next world, and for future generations. That's the power of Gemara. Rabbi Chanina Amar, Kol Yimei Ani Roim. So we'll say, so now that's fine. So that's the first sugya. Now the Gemara goes in a little bit of a different direction. Kol Yimei Ani Roim, all the days of the poor person are bad. Zesh Yesh Lo Isha Ra. This is for someone who has a bad wife. We'll say, which is a profound yisod. If a person does not have shalom bayis, they have nothing in this world. We know this. You could have all the money, all the success, everything else. If you don't have shalom in your wife, shalom in your life, then at the end of the day, a person could feel totally impoverished. The Tov Leiv Mishte Tamid. Now conversely, if a person does have good shalom bayis, person Baruch Hashem has a good solid marriage, then ultimately Tov Leiv Mishte Tamid. That is a person who has, again, that is a heart that is filled with perpetual joy. Zeh Sheyesh Lo Isha Tova. So beautiful. This is someone who has a good marriage. Rabbi Yanai says, Kol Yimei Ani Raim. These are all incredible Gemaras that we could spend literally days and days on. What does it mean all the days of a pauper are bad? All of these are pauper are bad. Ze istinis. They will say this is great. This is someone who is fastidious. Right now, it's interesting because the Rashbam says, "Ze istinis mi shedaito katza velibo nimas b'chol davar maguna shuroa." This is someone who is very sensitive, right? He's sensitive to sight, and he's sensitive to smell, and he's sensitive to this, and he's sensitive to that, and a very high maintenance individual. So Rabbi say, you know what happens with high maintenance individuals? They're always brightest, right? Because life is not a high maintenance experience, right? At the end of the day, life is filled with offensive things, offensive people, offensive sights, offensive odors, offensive things all the time. So if a person is just high maintenance in this way, they're always going to be brightest. On the flip side, V'tov leiv mishtatam. This is beautiful. And what does it mean? Someone who's perpetually happy. Zeh shedaito yafa. This refers ultimately to someone. The Rashbam says shesova hakol deino mazik lo shum lichluch v'shum davar miyus. This is a guy who could tolerate everything. Tolerate everything. You know, say it's such a profound yesod, right? All of us enjoy nice things. The problem is, if you have to have nice things, then you just become, it's much more difficult to make you happy in life because you just have a much higher bar of expectations. Whereas if you lower that bar and you don't need all the nice things to make you happy and to engender a sense of contentment, life itself becomes so much more perpetually enjoyable. Incredible. The Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Kol Yimei Ani Raim. Rabbi Yochanan says, all the days of the pauper are bad. What does this refer to? Ze Rachamon. This refers to someone who is very sensitive. So we'll say, this is incredible. What does it mean? Look at the Rashbam. It's the last Rashbam on the page. Ze Rachamon. So he says, Kama inyanim hiroeh v'kama ma'oros shalibo bocha tadir alehem. So we'll say, someone who is sensitive, there is always something to cry about. There is always something to be sad about, right? There is no absence, there's no lack of things that are heartbreaking and overwhelming in this world. So someone who's incredibly sensitive is going to be almost like in a perpetual state of brokenness, just a feeling of brokenness over what he or she sees in the world around them. On the other hand, v'tov leiv mishta tamid, someone who is always happy, ze achzari. Now this is what's interesting. Achzar normally means someone who's like cruel or indifferent, but that's not how it's being used over here. What it's being used over here is really someone who just is not as sensitive. That sometimes life requires, it's really incredible Gemara. Life requires almost this balance. I will say, if you think about it, there is never a shortage of suffering and difficulty in this world. And there are people who are able to feel that suffering and able to feel that pain of the other as if it were their own. That pain and that suffering can become so acute that a person can walk around all of life in a constant state of brokenness. What's on the other hand? On the other hand, a person can be totally unfeeling. So obviously life is all about establishing this. Shlomo Melech is not telling us to be unfeeling, but at the same time there has to create this balance, because if I'm always feeling the pain and brokenness of the world, then that prevents me from feeling the beautiful simcha that does exist in my life, in the world. So one has to create this balance between being feeling and sensitive, but not so feeling and sensitive that I'm always brought to my knees, in sadness. The ability to kind of mitigate it or temper it a little bit so that a person is able to experience their own simchas and the simcha in the world as well. Incredible. Rabbi Shmuel Levi Amar, Kol Yimei Ani Raim. What does it mean all the days of the pauper are bad? Zeh shedaito kitsara. So I'll say this is incredible. But tov, so that refers to someone who's cheap. Someone who's cheap, right? Someone not cheap, what's the word? The better word, cheap. Stingy. Person who's stingy, right? The person doesn't spend any money. So we'll say, so a person like that, again, say, you have to spend money in the world. So there are people who they never want to spend, even on things that are necessary. Just don't want. So again, every expenditure of money is like grueling, right? Every expenditure of money is painful. Well, you can't live without spending money. So if every expenditure of money is painful, so such a person like that is going to have a miserable life. On the other hand, Tov Leiv Mishte Tamid, who is a person who is perpetually happy? Zeh Shedaito Rachava. This refers to someone who's generous. And we'll say that this is a beautiful, beautiful Gemara. And we know this. The greatest happiness in life comes from giving. Anyone who has ever had the schus to give tzedakah, and especially to make a significant gift of tzedakah, whatever significant is relative, significant gift of tzedakah, the feeling that one has after they give that check or after they make that commitment, that is the greatest simcha in life. A person feels literally like they've just done something magnificent. This is not a fundraising pitch, I want to be clear. This is, I know, I see for myself. I'll be honest first. The first major gift my wife and I ever made for us, a major gift, was again, Baruch Hashem, for our new Beis HaKnesses, the feeling that you've done something transformative. Something major, like you've changed the world with your money, not with your actions. You have to change the world with your actions. The first time you feel like mamish, like a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like I've done something, I've committed to something that is mamish transformative in a significant way for myself and for others. So the Gemara says and now you feel like at the end of the day, you have done something that Baruch Hashem has magnificently changed the world. That's Tov Lev Mishtet Tamid. That is someone ultimately who walks around with perpetual simcha. Incredible. Top of Kuf Mem Vav. Rabbi Shmuel Levi. Kol Yimei Ani Raim. All the days, so again, all different interpretations. The Gemara says, how can you, Rabbi Shmuel Levi asks a kasha, how can you say that all the days of the Ani are bad? V'ha'ika Shabbos Yom Tovim. What about Shabbos and Yom Tov? Even in Ani as Shabbos Yom Tov, the Rashbam points out over here, and remember again, the community is obligated to make sure that the Ani has what he needs for Shabbos and Yom Tov. So he's going to have food, he's going to have drink. So why Shabbos and Yom Tov so bad? So the Gemara says, Kiddush Shmuel, Shinui Veses Tchila Choli. We'll also be seen this Gemara. No, because for an Ani, Shabbos and Yom Tov is difficult also. Why? Because on Shabbos and Yom Tov he's going to eat things that he doesn't normally eat during the week. And sometimes when a person veers from their regular diet, so that has a negative physical impact. So the Ani has food on Shabbos and Yom Tov. At the end of the day, even Shabbos Yom Tov have an adverse effect on him. Kedamar Shmuel Shinui Veses Tchila Choli. Ksiv b'Sefer Ben Sira. There's so much to say, by the way, on that of Shinui Veses Tchilas Choli that sometimes I will say, we get ourselves into a Veses means like a regular schedule. I get myself into a regular schedule, and then sometimes one of the most difficult things is changing habits, is changing, quote unquote, the regular schedule. It's that Shinui Veses Tchilas Choli means if you want to affect change in your life, do not expect it to be easy. Anytime you want to affect change, how does that start? Shinui Veses Tchilas, the beginning of any life change is going to be marked by what? Choli, difficulty. Sometimes there's change we want to affect in our lives, personal change, lifestyle change, whatever it may be, and we think that because the change is a good change, a beautiful change, that it should come easy. There is no such thing as easy change. And the more dramatic the change, the more dramatic the initial illness. Shinui Vesas, you want to change something about your life, be prepared, tchilas, that it is going to start with choli, with some level of difficulty. And now I will say, here's what happens in life. That's why most people don't affect change. Why? Because when they begin to make the change, they run into the choli, they run into the difficulty, they run into the challenge, like, okay, I tried, and we simply revert back to what was. But if we're willing to power through the initial choli, the initial challenge, then ultimately the change sticks, and there's no telling what we can accomplish. Incredible Gemara. Gemara says, Sefer Ben Sira says in the book, work of Ben Sira. The Rashbam points out over here. The Rashbam says that Ben Sira, right, was commenting on the pasuk of Shlomo HaMelech. Kol Yimei Ani Raim, Ben Sira Omer Af Leilos. So it's interesting. Shlomo HaMelech said the days of the Ani are difficult. Ben Sira said, by the way, so are the nights. Right? Why are the nights? Ben Sira is not making anything better. Right? So Ben Sira says, why the nights? See, he says, B'shafal Gogim Ganu, Mimatar Gogim Legogo. So also because the home of the Ani is often lower than the other homes. So what happens? His roof is lower than the other roofs. So what happens? When it rains, the water sheets off the upper roofs onto his roof and causes a lot of noise. So not only is he living in a compromised domicile, but now he's got to deal with the rain sheeting off of everybody else's roof onto his roof. Not only that, Karmo I'm sorry. Barom Harim Karmo, the ani, because he can't afford regular land, often has to purchase vineyards, hilltop vineyards. I will say, as beautiful and as wonderful as hilltop vineyards sound, that's actually not the ideal place for the vineyard. Why? Because what happens? So me afar Karmo lekramim, because his karim, because his vineyard is exposed. So when the wind blows, it blows off the topsoil and the fertilizer onto other fields. So even though he tries to work his field, at the end of the day, his field is compromised as well. So Ben Sira just adding in over here, not only does the ani have difficulty by day, but he also has difficulty at night. Sorry, not only does he have difficulty by day, but he also has difficulty by night. Incredible, we'll say. So much more to say in that Gemara, but for a different time. Mishnah, Hasholech Sivlonos Labeis Chamav. So we'll say back now. Before we were talking about Shoshvinos, right, which was the reciprocal gift, wedding gift, which really more became like a loan. Now, and we made reference to Sivlonos. Sivlonos are gifts that are sent from a chassan to his kala. So now we're focusing on Sivlonos. Hasholech Sivlonos Labeis Chamav. So Reuven does Kiddushin with Rachel. Now remember again, during Kiddushin, Rachel is still living in her father's home. So what happens? So Reuven sends Sivlonos to his father-in-law's home. So Shalach Sham. If you take a quick look at the Rashbam says, "Hasholech Sivlonos minag chasanam la'achar kiddushin l'macharas sholech lebeis chamav lechvod ishto." So it'd be common for a chasan to go ahead and send gifts to his kala while she's living in her father's home. Tachshitin umine peiros vekade yayin vekade shemen, so jewelry and fruit and barrels of wine and barrels of oil. Upamim ochal shaimam, and sometimes the chasan himself goes there for a meal. Okay, so what happens? So Reuven sends Sivlonos to the house of his father-in-law. Shalach sham me'amana va'achol sham sudas chasan afilu b'dina ein nigvin. So we'll say, so now obviously we know what's going to come up over here. What's going to be the shaila? The shaila is, if the wedding does not progress, is the kala and her family obligated to refund the Sivlonos? So the Mishnah introduces us with the interesting idea that essentially if Reuven sent Sivlonos to Rachel's family, and Reuven dines with, he has a meal with Rachel and her family at his father-in-law's home, and he ate there at least the equivalent of a dinar. Even if they subsequently decide to break off the marriage, and remember again, you can't just break off kiddushin, you have to do a get, right? So even so, the Sivlonos need not be refunded. Ein nigvin. Lo achal sham sudas chasan, hara elu nigvin. If he did not go ahead and have a meal there, then they would be obligated to go ahead and refund the Sivlonos. So I will say, so now we'll see over here. So what's the pshat? What does the meal have to do with anything? So the Rashbam says something very interesting. The Rashbam says that halacha l'maisa, essentially, once he's eaten there and he's dined with them, he's mochel on the gifts. The act of having a meal with them creates a heightened level of relationship, and that heightened level of relationship, that coming over for dinner, essentially says, I'm mochel on the gifts, and even if the wedding or even if the marriage does not progress into nisuin, you need not give it back to me. Conversely, if he doesn't dine with them, then halacha l'maisa, he's not mochel on the gifts, and should the marriage not progress, they do have to refund the Sivlonos. Okay, shalach Sivlonos merubim shiachzrim ala beis baila hare elu nigvin. So we'll say, now here's another type of Sivlonos. Sometimes Reuven would send to his wife gifts, large gifts, and the assumption was that when Rachel gets married, these would come back with her into marriage. Let's say he gave her livestock, for example, right? Very romantic, right? Here's, I love you, here's a sheep, right? So the mice, again, these are larger gifts, and the assumption is when they get married, she's going to bring them to the marital home. So these type of Sivlonos, obviously if the marriage does not progress, then halacha l'maisa, they do get returned. Sivlonos small Sivlonos that are usually used up, fall into this category like food, stuff that's consumed or stuff that's small that's quickly used. In the event that the marriage does not progress to nisuin, they are not returned to the chassan. Okay, so let's analyze. So the first halacha of the Mishnah was that if Reuven sends Sivlonos and then comes over for dinner, the act of eating together with the kala and her family creates a heightened level of relationship. That heightened level of relationship creates a mechila, creates a forgiveness on the part of Reuven about the Sivlonos, and therefore even if the marriage does not progress, the family need not refund the Sivlonos. We'll say it's actually a very beautiful Mutzah Haskell, that heightened level of relationship creates mechila. The closer you are to someone, the closer you are to someone, the more ready you are to forgive certain things, right? So the chassan now is closer to his kala and her family because he dined with them. He's mochel nesivlonos, right? The closer we are to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more that Ribono Shel Olam is willing to be mochel on things as well. The higher the level of the relationship, the greater the willingness to forgive. Amarava, dafka dinar. So the Mishnah makes it sound like that as long as Reuven ate a dinar's worth of food, then ultimately he's mochel nesivlonos. Ava pachos mi dinar lo, but less than dinar not. So Mara says, so pshita. Okay, what do you? That's obvious. Dinar tanan. Again, we said a dinar. The Mishnah said a dinar. So ma'adatem, what would you have thought? Hu adin dafilu pachos mi dinar. I might have thought that maybe even if he eats less than a dinar, he's already mochel. The haidik tani dinar archa de milsa katani. Why does it say a dinar? Because I will say it's very common for a person who sits down for a meal to eat at least a dinar's worth of food. But maybe even if he ate less than a dinar, maybe he's still mochel. Kamash Shmuel, no. Kamash, no, actually it's exact. It's exact. That really what the Mishnah is saying is like this. If Reuven comes and he joins them for a meal and he eats some basic significant amount as quantified by a dinar, that's a meal, that's a connection, heightened level of relationship results in his mechila of the sivlonos. So we'll say the Gemara asks a number of questions. Achol, Tanan, Shah Samai. So the Gemara says, it only says that he ate. He ate with his in-laws. What if he drank? Right? You got to do that a lot with the in-laws, right? What if he drank, right? So again, you can see a case like this where there is a dinar worth of consumption, but not in the form of food. He has a glass of wine, he has a l'chaim. So what if he just drank a dinar's worth? Or the Gemara says, who? Tanan, shlucho mai. What is interesting? What happens if it's not Reuven that went over for dinner? I don't know how this to go over, but Reuven sent his shaliach, right? He sent an agent to have dinner with his in-laws. No, there may be something to this, right? I think there's a business idea involved in over here. So the Gemara says, so what about if it wasn't him? It was his shaliach. So sham tanan. So the Gemara says sham tanan shagar lomai. So again, the way the Mishnah is set up is Reuven's going over to his in-laws' house to eat something. What happens if he didn't go to his in-laws, but his in-laws sent food to him? Right? So in other words, he didn't come to them for the meal, they sent to him. So Tzemach says, so again, Tzemach says all these questions. Tzemach says, Tashma, let's analyze. Tashma, Rabbi Shmuel, Ma'aseh ba'adam echad sheshiger lebeis chamav. Let's listen to this story. So the Gemara tells a story over here. There was a guy, call him Reuven. And what happened? Reuven was engaged to Rachel, and he's very excited about the shidduch, and he sent a massive sivlonos gift over to his father-in-law's home. And he said, listen to this, Mea krono shal kadei yain v'shal kadei shemen v'shal klei kesef v'shal klei zav. He sent 100 wagons filled with barrels of wine, barrels of oil, silver utensils, gold utensils, v'shal kli milas, fine linen, v'rachav b'simchaso. And Reuven was so excited, he rode on his horse to his in-law's house, v'halach v'amad al pesach beis chamav, and he's by the entranceway of his in-law's house, v'hotzio kos shalchamin. They brought him out a cup of warm wine. So that was a delicacy, warm wine. V'shasa, Reuven drank it, umeis, and he died. Awkward, right? And so I say he died. And I will say now, by the way, this was a story. This was a Maisa. He died. Vizu, the Gemara says, Vizu halacha hela Rabbi Acha sar habira tnei chachamim luusha. So Rabbi Acha, the sar habira. And I will say it's interesting. He calls him the master of the bira. So it's interesting that the Rashbam says over here. Where does he say it? Yeah, Be'usha. Okay, we'll see later. I remember where the Rashbam is. It comes later on. The Rashbam is later on. All right, whatever. So Sar Habira says, what Sar Habira actually means. Sar Habira could just mean simply, again, that he was an official in the Beis HaMikdash. Bira is the Beis HaMikdash. Or that he had a lot, or Bira could mean the Beis Medrash, or Bira could just mean that he was in charge of a very large estate. Okay, so I said before Rabbi Acha, so they brought this before Rabbi Acha, and Rabbi Acha brought it before the Chum in Usha, V'amru, Sivlonos ha'asuyos libalos in, ein nigvin, v'she'in asuyin libalos nigvin. So essentially we'll say the halacha is like this. Any sivlonos that would be commonly used don't have to be returned. But sivlonos that are not commonly used do have to be returned. So we'll say, Shmamina afilu shasa. So we'll say, so what do you see from here? Now the idea over here is, because the chassan drank something, because the chazan drank something, so that's considered as if he dined with his in-laws. He dined with his in-laws. So because of that, again, that triggers the halacha that says essentially anything that they can consume is consumable and doesn't have to be returned, but anything that's larger and not consumed does have to be returned. So you see at least from here that drinking is the equivalent of eating. When it comes to dining with your in-laws, that triggers the sivlonos halacha. Shamis mina, so Gemara says, by the way, you can learn something else from here. Shamis mina, afilu pachos midinar. The truth is, all he had was a glass of wine. So it's possible that, again, I will say that in this glass of wine, that this glass of wine was less than a dinar. Presumably a glass of wine is less than a dinar. And therefore you see from here that even consumption of less than a dinar triggers these Sivlonos laws. Amar Rashi, no, not necessarily. Man lemalon delo shachki be marganisa the shavi alpha zuzi v'ashke. But it's pretty wild. So Rashban points out that apparently rich people sometimes had the practice of grinding up a pearl and putting the pearl into the wine. They felt that had certain, Rashban points out, very curative effects. And you know what it's like? They have this today where people take like gold. They take gold and they actually put like gold shavings on food or in drinks. Again, it's consumable. So again, just representative of excess. So the idea over here is that apparently rich people used to go ahead and grind up pearls in order to go ahead and consume it. So it could be that even a glass of wine had a very high value. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Shamis mina afilu shigrilo." Furthermore, what else can you see from this story? Remember, here in this case, Reuven the Chassan never even came in his in-law's house, right? He was outside on his horse. So you see from here that even if the father-in-law sent the son-in-law, future son-in-law, food, that even if he didn't come in, that also triggers the Sivlonos law. So the Gemara says, not necessarily. Dilma kol Pesach beis chamav kebeis chamav dami. Maybe the entranceway of the house is like the house itself. Okay, say by lo ma'ashei shalish shevach ma'ashei shalish. So say, so now what we've established is like this: it's only if the chassan comes to his in-law's house and eats a dinar's worth of food that halacha l'maisa triggers the halacha of sivlonos. That essentially he's mochel. He's mochel. So what happens if he doesn't eat a dinar? So can you prorate that for sivlonos? Or shevach sivlonos mahu. What happens if this sivlonos, the gifts given, appreciate? Who goes ahead and gets that appreciation? Now, kevan di'i isnu lididi hadri b'shusei shavuach. So let's say for larger sivlonos, well, let's say the sheep case, right, where the chassid gives it to the kala, but the understanding is that when they get married, she's bringing it back to the marital home. So does that mean that technically speaking, it's still in his rishus, and therefore Allah might say any appreciation he benefits from as well? O dilma kevan di avdio mignavi by shlumile b'shusa didash shavuach, or maybe no, maybe since in certain cases, which we'll see, if the large sivlonos are stolen or lost, she will be responsible for that. It's considered to be in her domain, teku. Okay, so the Gemara leaves that as an open-ended question. By Rava asks as follows: Sivlonos hasuin li balos v'lo balu mau. So I'll say it's an interesting question. So one thing we've established is that halacha l'maisa, any sivlonos that would normally be consumed, right? So halacha l'maisa, again, everyone agrees that obviously there's no backsies on those, right? In other words, those don't have to be returned. But let's say they weren't consumed. Let's say they weren't consumed. So what is the halacha? What is the halacha? So if you take a look at the Rashbam says, "Da'amran delo hadri im lo balu b'shas chazara osan she'ein asuin li balos mi hadri manalo." So we'll say, so that's the shaila. If you have sivlonos that would normally be consumed and therefore would not be returned, so fine. But what if they were not consumed? Is there an obligation to return them upon dissolution of the marriage? So Tashma v'zu halacha hela Rabbi Achas Rabbi Lefecham beusha. So again, once again, Rabbi Achas Rabira brought this up to the Rabbanim in Usha. Va'amru sivlonos ha'asuyin li balos ein nigvin. Any sivlonos that are going to be used up are not collected. V'she'ein asuyin li balos nigvin. But things that are not used up are collected. Ma'elav afagav delo balu. Doesn't this mean that items that would normally be consumed, even if they're not consumed, don't get returned? Gemara says not necessarily lo de balu. No, it only means things that are consumed and were consumed, there's no obligation to return it. But it could very well be that things that are normally consumed but were not consumed, they're still extant at the time of the dissolution of the marriage, have to be returned. Okay, Tashma sivlonos mu'atan shetishtamish bahan v'hi bebeis aviha ein nigvin. So I will say if Ruvain sent a small amount of sivlonos that she would normally go ahead and use up while she's in her father's home, are not collected upon dissolution of the marriage. Tirgima Rava explained Bava v'savkasa, hair coverings, like small hair coverings, those are things that would not go back. So this is interesting. So Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav. There was a story of a guy, a chassan, who sent to his father-in-law's home new wine, new oil, and linen garments, and he sent it around Shavuos time. That's the end of the story. That's the end of the story. So the Gemara says, okay, what are you shkoyach, right? In other words, what are you conveying to me in this case? So the Gemara will say so beautifully. One possibility is the Gemara is telling us the chashivas of Eretz Yisrael. Now I will say, how is this chashivas of Eretz Yisrael? Now remember again, we'll say Shavuos is very, very early on in the harvest season. Right? It's the beginning of wheat harvest. So the idea over here that during Shavuos you would have new wine, new oil, right? And linen garments, that means that is an expedited harvest process, an expedited bounty in Eretz Yisrael. So it could be telling us about the greatness of Eretz Yisrael. Furthermore, it could also be saying that upon the dissolution of the marriage, if Ruvain claims, I gave you these items, we wouldn't say that's impossible, that's too early in the season, but rather again, it is possible that he had given her those things so early, even by Shavuos. Okay, this is interesting, I'm about to say interesting case here. Ruvain was married to Rachel. Now, after they were married, the Rashbam points out over here that Ruvain was told that Rachel doesn't have a sense of smell. Now, lacking a sense of smell is considered to be a mum, which if Ruvain did not know about it beforehand, could very well be a claim of mekachtos. So Ruvain hears after Kiddushin that Lamaisa, that his wife does not have a sense of smell. Now, so what happens? He wants to test it. Now, obviously, there's something incredibly wrong in this marriage to begin with, right? Because what could have been a simple conversation, although again, it's not so pasha, because if he's looking to potentially dissolve the marriage, it's not so, obviously there's other stuff going on over here as well, right? But Lamaisa, so he devises a test. What does he do? He goes after her into a churva, into a ruin. Now, he had a radish in his pocket, and he's like, I smell a radish from the galil. So he's trying to test whether or not she will actually smell it or not. So Amra Beis, okay, at least he made it, right? So Amra she said to him, man yohev lan miksovos di Yericho va'achil nabei. Oh, if only I would have a date from Yericho to eat with it. As well say, so this common radishes, Rashbam points out, radishes have a sharp taste. So often people would eat dates with radishes to blunt the sharpness of the radish. So she understood what was happening over here. Now, in fact, she did not have a sense of smell. So she understood what was occurring over here. So what does she say? So she plays the game also. And she says, you know what, if only I had a date to go and go with the radish. So I'll say, then, crazy turn of events, Nafa ale churva umesa. They were in a ruin, right? They were in a ruin, and the ruin fell on her, and she died. So I'll say, okay. The end, right? The end. So I'll say, so now interesting. So I'll say, the Gemara says as follows. Now, again, what's the shiloh over here? So the Gemara says, Amru chachamim hovlo nichnas achare ela lebotka mesa eni yarsha. So I'll say, here's what's interesting. Now, what was the shiloh over here? The shiloh is now she died. So the question now is, does her husband inherit her? So they paskin on this case that he does not inherit her. Why not? Because what the Rashbam points out that any time a husband has intended to divorce his wife, even though he has not yet divorced her, once the intention was to divorce her, he has forfeited the right to inherit her. So they paskin in this case that because this whole thing was a ruse to see whether or not he was going to dissolve the marriage, that clearly indicated that at least dissolution of the marriage was a possibility that was on his mind, because that was his mindset. And again, she did not have the sense of smell, and as such, presumably based on the story, he was going to dissolve the marriage. Therefore, he has forfeited the right to go ahead and inherit her. Incredible. They both say, by the way, the only connection over there is it's the same opinions that we're dealing with over here. They both say that's why story has nothing to do with anything we're doing before, and just the same review the name of Rav. Incredible. We'll say one more line. Savlonos muatin shetishtamesh bahen beveis avia. So we'll say, remember again, if he sent her, Yosef, so let's just go. Yosef Rabin Saba Kamid Rapapa v'Yosef v'Kamar Ben Shemesehi Ben Shemesu Ben Shemesu Hadruhu Savlonos Hajj. So we'll say, now we're getting halacha l'maisa. Halacha l'maisa. So remember again, what is this whole sugi about? This whole sugi is about halacha l'maisa. If there are wedding gifts that were given, and when we say wedding gifts, remember these are gifts given after Kiddushin, before Nisuin. And then Nisuin never happens. Is there an obligation to return the gifts or not? That's our Shaila. So now comes along Rabin Sabbath in front of Rav Papa, and they say the following. Whether she died, whether he died, whether he reneged on the marriage, gifts go back. Gifts are returned. So he died, she died, he reneges on the marriage, gifts are returned. Food and drink never returned, right? Because once again, the assumption is that food and drink are consumable or perishable sivlonos. There is no obligation to return. Hadra ba'ihi, hadra afilu kisha diarka. If she reneges, then everything goes back, even a bundle of vegetables. Shabbos said this is interesting. So as much as we say that perishables don't go back, halacha l'maisa, if she is the one who reneges, all the sivlonos go back. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua v'Shaman hu demei Basra b'Zol ad kam b'Zol ad tilsa. So it sounds like again, if she reneges, then halacha l'maisa they have to return everything, even perishables, which means everything that was consumed. But I will say, but what we do is we go in and we evaluate all perishables at a discounted price. How much is a discounted price? 1/3 of their actual market value. So we'll have to stop over here for today. Again, we got to the sugya. So tomorrow we will start off in with the Rambam on sivlonos. We saw Rambam by Kesef Kiddushin. Tomorrow Rambam on Sivlonos. Shkoyach. All right, have a great day, everyone.